Now we try to describe this data set. For example, how many rows are there in the data? What is the average price of ties in this data set? We're going to start with finding the size of the data sample. Here's how we can show the number of rows in the data with one of the built-in list functions, length. I'm going to quickly show you using the Python REPL. If we have a list, apples equal 1, 2, 3, and if we were to say the length of apples, we have 3. We're going to use this concept to count how many ties we have in our data sample. I'm going to import everything from our first file. And then I'm going to use length of data from CSV. But I actually want to be able to repeatedly call this, so I'm going to use a function number of records and pass in the data sample. So instead of data from CSV, we're going to get the length of the data sample and pass in data from CSV later on. I'm actually going to change this to a full word number. And we'll call this maybe number of ties. None ties. Okay, that should not be it. We want to say, oh, yeah, we definitely want to return the length. So, and also we want to make sure that we don't see that later on. So let's go back to our file and let's comment out the print. All right, close that. Clear, and then we'll say pythonscience.py. 5051 ties in our data sample. But remember, our first line in our file was the header, so it's actually 5050 ties. So what we might want to do is say -1 make it spaced very nicely. And we have 5050 ties in our data sample. Clear. I'm going to close that file. It is essentially counting the length of the list, data from CSV, with one of Python's built-in functions. It also means it's telling you how many index values are in there. The total number of rows in our data, including the header, is 5051. Since the data is stored in a list, let's quickly look at a few more useful built-in functions for lists. Sort. This helps you sort items of the list in place. It only modifies the list and has no return value printed. Reverse. This reverses the elements of the list in place. List.count x, the number of times that x appears in the list. Append is very useful. List.append x is how you write it, and this adds an item to the end of the list. Let's try an exercise to see how to work with lists. Let's try to sort and count the number of green apples in 2 bins. And let's first open up a Python REPL. Oops, just Python. We want to say that my apple bin has several apples. And then maybe your apple bin has green and red apples as well. want to know how many green apples we have. So let's say my green apples equals my apple bin count green I have 3 green apples, and your green apples you have 4 apples that are green. So how many do we have total? We can print my green apples plus your green apples. And between the two of us, we have 7 green apples. With NumPy, we can find the size of our data sample using their size property. Let's create another function called define number of records 2. And we're going to pass in the data sample. And let's return the data sample.size. Now remember, you're going to be working with the NumPy data structure. So this won't work for a nested list. So let's print out the output again, and we have Python S2V2. Oh, I need to have the function names exactly the same to have it to work. So let's print that. With our NumPy version, we said to skip the header when we read the text file. So that's why we didn't have to include this -1 in our return